A young emperor stands on a balcony in Chang'an, looking west toward deserts no Chinese army has ever crossed. He is 16 years old. He has just inherited the richest empire on earth. By the time he dies, that treasury will be empty, and the man who made China itself will be remembered as the ruler who nearly broke it. This is the story of how a teenage prince became the most ambitious emperor in Chinese history, and what that ambition cost. The year is 141 BC. The Han Dynasty is 60 years old, and quietly, it has become a miracle. Granaries overflow. Strings of copper coins rot in the imperial vaults because no one bothers to spend them. 2 generations of cautious emperors have built something rare in history, a peaceful, wealthy China. Then a boy puts on the dragon robes and decides peace is not enough. His birth name is Lucha. History will call him Wudi, the martial emperor. He grows up inside the Wei Yang Palace, a labyrinth of red lacquer corridors and silk-curtained chambers. His mother schemes him onto the throne over an older half-brother through years of court manipulation. He learns early that power is not inherited. It is taken, and then it is held. At 15, he is named crown prince. At 16, his father dies and the empire is his. But not really. His grandmother, the formidable Grand Empress Dowager Dou, still rules from behind a screen. She is a devout follower of the old Taoist philosophy: quiet government, low taxes, do not disturb the world. The boy emperor disagrees with every word of it. He waits. For 6 years, he plays the dutiful grandson, studying texts, marrying the right women, smiling at the right ministers. When she finally dies in 135 BC, Duce steps out from behind her shadow as a man transformed. He summons scholars from every corner of the empire and asks one question: how should China be ruled? A Confucian named Dong Zhongshu gives him the answer he wants: one emperor, one doctrine, one heaven. Wudi makes Confucianism the official ideology of the state, and it will remain so for 2,000 years. He builds an imperial academy in the capital to train future officials in this single approved philosophy. For the first time in Chinese history, the road to power runs through a classroom, not a battlefield clan. The classroom is only half of his vision. The other half is the horse. To the north, beyond the Great Wall, ride the Xiongnu, a confederation of mounted nomads who have terrorized China for a century. Wudi's grandfathers paid them tribute, sent them silk, sent them princesses, bought peace with humiliation. Wudi looks at those treaties and sees a stain. He decides to erase it. In 130 BC, he springs a trap at a town called Mai, trying to ambush the Xiongnu leader with 300,000 men. The plan leaks, the nomads escape, the peace is shattered anyway. And so begins the longest war of his reign. A war that will last, on and off, for more than 40 years. He finds his weapon in a young cavalry officer named Wei Jing, the half-brother of one of his concubines. Wei Jing rides north and does something Chinese armies have rarely done. He wins. He pushes the Xiongnu out of the Ordos Loop, the great northern bend of the Yellow River, and returns in triumph. Then comes the nephew, Hua Kubing, barely 18 years old, with the instincts of a wolf. Wu leads lightning raids deep into the steppe, burning camps, capturing princes, riding farther than any Han general before him. By 119 BC, his cavalry reaches the edge of Lake Baikal in what is now Siberia and pours wine onto the grass in offering. The Xiongnu break. Their court flees north. The Great Wall is no longer a desperate barrier. It is a launching pad. Wudi is now in his 30s, and he has done what his ancestors only dreamed of. He has humbled the steppe. But the man cannot stop. The map is unfinished, and he can see it from his throne. He sends an envoy named Zhang Qian westward into lands no Chinese official has ever mapped. Zhang Qian is captured by the Xiongnu, held for 10 years, escapes, keeps going, and finally returns 13 years later. He brings back stories of grape wine, of fortified cities, of magnificent horses that seem to sweat blood. He has, without knowing it, opened the road that history will one day call the Silk Road. Wudi listens to every word, and he wants those horses. He sends armies into the Fergana Valley in modern Uzbekistan, 4,000 miles from his capital. The first expedition fails. He sends another, larger, costlier, and finally returns with the prized stallions of Dayuan. Caravans begin to flow. Chinese silk reaches Persia. Persian glass reaches Chang'an. The world has been stitched together. He turns south next. He marches armies into what is now Vietnam, into Yunnan, into the jungles of Guangdong. He turns east into the Korean Peninsula, establishing commanderies that will shape that region for centuries. By 100 BC, the map of China, the shape every modern child learns to draw, exists for the first time. Is his map. He drew it in Conquest. Let me pause here and ask you something, because I think Wudi sits at a real fault line in history. He gave China its borders, its bureaucracy, its official philosophy, its place on the Silk Road. But he did it through endless war, heavy taxes, and a state that watched its own people more closely than ever before. So tell me in the comments, was Han Wudi a builder of civilization or a tyrant who got lucky with good generals? I genuinely want to know how you see him. Now, let's get back to the story, because this is where it turns. Because empires do not run on glory. They run on grain, on copper, on men. And by the time Wudi's in his 40s, all three are running out. His campaigns have swallowed the treasury his grandfather spent 60 years filling. Soldiers must be fed. Horses must be bred. Garrisons must be supplied across thousands of miles of desert. So the emperor reaches deeper into his own country. He nationalizes the salt industry. He nationalizes iron. The state becomes the only legal seller of both. He invents new taxes on merchants, on carts, on boats, on private wealth itself. He debases the coinage, minting cheaper money, and watches prices spiral. He creates a system called the equitable transport, where officials buy goods cheap in one province and sell dear in another. It works briefly. The treasury refills, the armies march again, and the merchant class begins to die. Old families that had survived warlords and rebellions are ruined by paperwork. Peasants who had farmed quietly for generations are conscripted into labor brigades, hauling supplies to the frontier. The granaries that once overflowed are now opened to feed soldiers, not villagers. Famine creeps into the provinces, banditry rises, officials report unrest and are punished for reporting it. And here's where the fatal flaw shows itself, the one thing that drives every emperor mad. Wudi cannot stop. He has spent his life believing that the next campaign will finally finish it. But there is no finishing it. The Xiongnu regroup. New tribes appear. New frontiers demand new armies. Worse, the man on the throne is changing. He's in his 50s now, and he is afraid. Afraid of death, afraid of betrayal, afraid of the gods themselves. He surrounds himself with magicians and alchemists who promise him an elixir of immortality. He climbs sacred mountains to perform rituals. He builds towers to commune with the spirits. He sends ships into the eastern sea looking for islands of the immortals that do not exist. And in his palace, paranoia begins to bloom. In 91 BC, an old courtier whispers that someone is using witchcraft to curse the emperor. Wudi believes it instantly. He orders an investigation. He puts a brutal official in charge. The investigation devours the court. Hundreds are accused. Dolls are dug from gardens. Confessions are tortured out. The accusations climb upward, room by room, until they reach the residence of the crown prince himself. The prince, Liu Ju, Wudi's own son, raised to inherit everything, panics. He cannot reach his father, who is away at a summer palace. Messengers are blocked. Rumors fly. Believing he is about to be executed, the prince raises troops in the capital to defend himself. For 5 days, father and son fight a civil war inside the streets of Chang'an. Tens of thousands die. The prince loses. He flees the city and hangs himself in a peasant's house. His mother, Empress Wei, takes her own life. His children are killed. His faction is wiped out. When Wudi finally understands what has happened, that there was no witchcraft, that his son was innocent, the old emperor breaks. He builds a tower called the Palace of Yearning for the Sun. He executes the men who manipulated him. But the heir is gone. The empire he conquered has no one trained to inherit it. 2 years later, in 89 BC, the martial emperor does something almost no Chinese emperor ever did. He issues a public edict, the Repenting Edict of Luntai, admitting that his policies have hurt his people. He cancels new military expeditions. He cancels a planned expansion into the western regions. He calls the wars a mistake. It is a single, stunning moment of honesty from a man who spent 50 years insisting he was right. In 87 BC, Han Wudi dies, age 69, after a reign of 54 years, one of the longest in Chinese history. He leaves the throne to a child, his youngest son, only 8 years old. He leaves an empire that stretches from Korea to Central Asia, from the Gobi to the South China Sea. He also leaves it exhausted, indebted, and quietly bleeding from 1,000 small wounds. For decades after his death, his successors will spin their reigns, just trying to recover. So why do we still know his name 1,200 years later? Because Wudi did something no single ruler has ever undone. He took a young, fragile dynasty and turned it into the template for what China would mean forever. The Han people, the Han language, the Han character, every one of these names traces back to his era. When a Chinese person today calls themselves Han, they are, in a sense, calling themselves his. He locked Confucianism into the bones of the state, and it stayed there until the 20th century. He created a civil service of educated officials, an idea so durable that Europe copied it 2,000 years later. He opened the Silk Road, and through it, the ancient world started talking to itself for the first time. The horses, the grapes, the music, the religions that traveled those routes. He set them in motion. He also left a warning that every great power eventually reads, whether it wants to or not. That expansion has a price. That glory and exhaustion are often the same thing, just measured at different moments. That a ruler can win every war and still lose the country he was trying to save. Han Wudi understood this at the very end. The Repenting Edict is his confession to history. It is the rare sound of a conqueror admitting that the cost of his greatness was paid by people he never met. If this story pulled you in, do me a quick favor and hit the like button. It genuinely helps the channel find more history lovers like you. And if you want more rulers, more conquerors, more stories of the people who shaped the world, go ahead and subscribe. Drop a comment and tell me which ruler I should cover next. There are dozens on the list, and your voice decides who rises first. Some of you have been asking for emperors outside of Europe, and I hear you. There are more coming. In fact, the next story walks into a palace where a queen is about to outmaneuver an empire 10 times her size. She will use marriage, language, and a single fleet of ships to keep her kingdom alive longer than anyone thought possible. Her name is one of the most famous in history, but the version you know is mostly wrong. I'll see you in that one.